When Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke in Rome at a defense conference this past July, his message to the audience of officials and experts was direct and urgent. He did not ask for general aid or vague promises. Instead, he spelled out exactly what his country needed: more air defense supplies, investments in interceptor drones, and advanced air defense systems and missiles. Those were the priorities. Those were the tools Ukraine required above anything else, and Zelensky was absolutely right to place such emphasis on them. His appeal, one he has repeated countless times since the war began, has become even more critical as Russia has shifted the nature of its campaign. Moscow is now throwing more drones at Ukraine than ever before, intensifying its aerial assaults in the hopes of overwhelming Ukraine's defenses. What has changed, however, is Ukraine's ability to respond. The country is no longer left exposed to the swarms of unmanned aerial vehicles that Russia hurls against its skies each week. Slowly but surely, Ukraine is building a truly layered defense, and at the center of that rising defensive pillar is a new and increasingly vital tool: the interceptor drone. These drones, which once seemed like a stopgap measure or even an improvised weapon, are now emerging as a defining capability in Ukraine's battle to protect its cities and infrastructure from relentless aerial attack. The urgency of this development was underscored on September 8th, when Ukraine experienced one of the largest aerial assaults of the war so far. In his evening address that night, Zelensky described the scale of the strike. Russia had launched 800 drone units in a single coordinated wave. More than 400 of those were Iranian-designed Shahed drones, the same type that has become infamous for its range, endurance, and destructive payload. For Ukrainians, the night was harrowing. The country braced itself as hundreds upon hundreds of these drones crossed its skies, each one a potential weapon of destruction. Yet Zelensky was able to deliver not just grim news but also evidence of progress. He revealed that Ukraine's interceptor drones, which had only begun to gain real prominence in 2025, played a decisive role in blunting the assault. There were significant results from the interceptor drones, more than 150 interceptions. Throughout the night, he reported. That means over 150 of the 747 drones Ukraine's defenses managed to destroy or disable were taken out by interceptors alone. Put another way, nearly 1/5 of Russia's massive drone horde was destroyed by this new category of defensive weapon. For a technology still in its relative infancy, that is nothing short of remarkable. Local officials added further detail. Mykola Kalashnik, head of the Kyiv Regional Military Civil Administration, confirmed that 80 of those drones were intercepted over Kyiv itself, setting what he called a new record for the number of interceptions in a night. This was no small matter. Kyiv, the capital and symbolic heart of Ukraine, has been targeted again and again for 80 drones. To be stopped before reaching it in a single night shows both the intensity of the Russian onslaught and the growing effectiveness of Ukraine's countermeasures. Still, Zelensky cautioned against complacency. As Business Insider noted in its coverage of his remarks, the president does not see interceptors as a silver bullet or catch-all solution to the challenges Ukraine faces in the air. Of course, not everything is being shot down yet, and we still need to further strengthen our air defenses, he explained. Yet his comments also made clear that Ukraine will be producing more of these drones. They are already proving their worth, and the logical step is to scale production rapidly. Interceptors may not be the final answer, but they are already a critical part of the puzzle. To understand why, it helps to define what interceptor drones actually are, and how they differ from the many other drones Ukraine already deploys. Business Insider offers a simple description. Interceptor drones, originally made to catch and destroy reconnaissance craft, are high-speed uncrewed aerial systems that must fly fast enough to chase down their target mid-air and crash into it. In other words, they are hunters. Rather than being used for surveillance or ground strikes like most drones, they are launched specifically to pursue and ram into incoming enemy drones, causing both to explode in the air rather than allowing the Russian drone to reach its ground target. Many interceptors are adapted from FPV, first-person view, drones. These transmit live video back to an operator, who then pilots the interceptor directly into its target. The principle is simple, but in practice it demands speed, maneuverability, and quick reactions. Pravda provided additional insight into how Ukraine developed this capability. According to a June article, Ukraine first experimented with primitive versions of interceptor drones in 2024. At that time, the country relied on ordinary FPV drones to try to attack slower Russian models like the Orlan and Supercam. These efforts worked on occasion, but faster drones, such as the Shaheds, often outran or outmaneuvered the improvised interceptors. Recognizing the limitations, Ukraine's engineers and military units collaborated to improve the technology. They began equipping troop units with small radar systems to help detect incoming drones sooner. Tactics evolved alongside hardware, allowing operators to launch more quickly and intercept more effectively. Over time, the interceptors became faster, more resilient, and better suited to the task. Some were even designed to resemble miniature aircraft rather than quadcopters, enabling them to chase Shaheds with greater success. The progression from makeshift adaptations in 2024 to specialized systems in 2025 marks a significant evolution. Today, interceptors are no longer just an experiment. They are a core element of Ukraine's strategy. Zelensky himself emphasized their importance in his September address. This is a top priority. Russians keep the number of Shaheds in massive strikes at the level of 300 to 400 per strike, and our interceptors must reach a matching level. This is realistic. His words reveal both the scale of the challenge and the confidence that Ukraine can build enough interceptors to keep pace with Russia's deployments. But to fully grasp why interceptors are so essential, it is worth examining the broader context of Russia's drone campaign over the past few months. August offered one stark illustration. According to ABC News, Russia launched 4,216 air attack vehicles at Ukraine that month alone. Of those, 4,060 were drones or decoy drones. The latter are particularly insidious, designed to trick Ukrainian air defense systems into expending valuable ammunition on false targets. On average, Ukraine faced 131 drones per day in August, plus 5 missiles daily. Ukrainian forces managed to shoot down about 85% of the drones, an impressive figure. Yet 609 still slipped through, striking targets and causing destruction. The sheer volume of drones highlights the pressure Ukraine is under. And August, intense as it was, pales in comparison to July. Al Jazeera reported that Russia launched 14 times as many drones at Ukraine in July 2025 as it did in July 2024, amounting to a staggering 6,297. Of these, 29 were Shahed drones. That averages out to more than 200 drones per day. July thus stands as the worst month yet of the war in terms of long-range drone strikes against Ukrainian cities. August's lower total raised some questions about why Russia scaled back, though analysts have not identified a definitive reason. Putin's demands have not softened. If anything, his ambitions remain maximalist, insisting on Ukraine surrendering vast territories. September may well mark another escalation, as evidenced by the record strike on September 8th. Some experts, including German Major General Christian Freuding, warn that Russia aims to build such vast numbers of drones that it could launch up to 2,000 in a single strike. Against that possibility, Ukraine must prepare now. The challenge is that Ukraine's current defenses, though diverse, can be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Business Insider notes that Ukraine employs a combination of air-to-air missiles, surface-to-air missiles, electronic warfare systems to jam signals, and mobile fire groups using heavy machine guns mounted on vehicles. These approaches are valuable, but waves of hundreds of drones at once can saturate them. Moscow has increasingly accumulated drones and ballistic missiles specifically to launch them in massive, simultaneous barrages. Ukraine's traditional air defenses alone cannot reliably keep up. That is why interceptors are such a priority. They fill the gap between Ukraine's existing but overstretched defenses and the escalating threat posed by Russia's drone swarms. The September 8th attack, therefore, served as both a trial and a proof of concept. Interceptors proved they could take down a fifth of Russia's drones during the largest strike yet. Now the task is to scale production and field more of them. Ukraine had already recognized this need before September. In mid-July, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal announced via telegram that the state was actively developing a market for Ukrainian-made interceptor drones. He revealed that 3 manufacturers had recently received state contracts, adding to an existing 4 contracts worth over $3 billion, about $72 million. We focused on providing drones to our soldiers on the front lines, Shmihal explained. We paid great attention to interceptor drones that are capable of countering Russian Shaheds. The president set a task to develop this area, and we already have 4 state contracts with manufacturers. This week, we also talked with large state banks about lending to manufacturers under state guarantees. The directive was clear: build as many interceptors as possible and do it quickly. This order aligned with earlier moves by Ukraine's Defense Procurement Agency, which had signed contracts for tens of thousands of interceptor drones in July. These drones are now being mass-produced, often by decentralized teams to reduce the risk of Russian strikes against centralized production facilities. The precise value of all contracts remains unknown, making it unclear whether the entire 72 million figure has already been spent. However, the scale of the contracts points toward a major buildup of interceptor capacity. Some of this funding may also support international partnerships. On July 23rd, Danish defense company Terma announced a collaboration with Ukrainian firm Odd Systems to develop a new generation of interceptor drones. These models will integrate artificial intelligence, reducing reliance on human operators and minimizing errors when chasing fast-moving targets. By merging these competencies, the two companies will develop a robust suite of drone interceptors capable of identifying, tracking, and autonomously neutralizing diverse aerial threats, and from FPV and ISR copters to fixed-wing reconnaissance and long-range strike drones like the Shahed, Terma declared in its press release. With AI, Ukraine could potentially increase its interception rate significantly, elevating the proportion of Russian drones destroyed beyond the current 1/5. For Russia, this would represent a severe blow. The rationale for such investment goes beyond effectiveness. Cost is a decisive factor. Traditional air defense missiles, particularly those used by systems like the Patriot, are prohibitively expensive. A single Patriot missile costs around $4 million. By contrast, interceptor drones are orders of magnitude cheaper. Figures vary depending on design, but estimates range from $500 to $5,000. Politico places typical costs between $1,000 and $5,000. Military commentator Wes O'Donnell highlighted an interceptor dubbed Sting, priced at $2,500, capable of reaching 5 miles per hour, fast enough to down most Shaheds. The Guardian recently profiled the Arbalete, a polystyrene delta-wing interceptor, costing just $500 to produce, flown by teams coordinating via radar and handheld controls. Even with limitations like a 40-minute battery life, such low-cost systems can be highly effective in mass deployment. Put in perspective, the $72 million Ukraine has committed to interceptors could buy between 14,400 and 144 disarmed drones, depending on the mix of models and costs. Even if the final number skews toward the lower end, that still represents a massive force compared to a handful of multi-million-dollar missiles. This economic logic explains why interceptors are not just useful, but essential. Ukraine cannot sustain a defense relying primarily on missiles costing millions each, particularly when Russia sends thousands of cheap drones monthly. Interceptors provide a scalable, cost-effective solution.